Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us in the next of our series of definitions webinars. My name is Jason Funderburg, and I am joined by the entire tournament department. Chris Roselle and Kirby Martin are going to be helping answer questions in the questions section, and Neil Gilman is going to be our presenter today. Just a reminder that today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on the GAP website at gapgolf.org/gap-webinars. We also encourage questions. Any questions you have, we will try and get to them today. If we can't get to them by asking them out loud, we'll try and respond to you directly. And also want to remind everyone that this is part 1 of 2 in this webinar series. So if you want to be sure to register for tomorrow's webinar as well, that also can be found at the gapgolf.org/gap-webinars address. So without further ado, Neil, you want to get us started here?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jason, and thank everybody for attending. I hope you had a safe and good holiday, for at least when the weather was cooperating. Today we're going to be talking about the status of the ball and the procedures, more so today about the status of the ball, and tomorrow about the procedures. But you can see here a list of definitions that we're going to actually begin to talk about, and we'll jump all the way down from in play to replace. And then tomorrow we'll talk about drop, relief areas, and things of that nature. I will say there are a few challenging concepts, few definitions that have multiple parts. So if you have those questions, feel free to fire those in there. We have 3 question slides that we will address some of those questions. And as Jason said, if we can't get your questions, we'll take them offline or we'll get to them tomorrow. But without further ado, we'll jump into our first definition there, which is in play. So in play is a status of the player's ball when it lies on the golf course and is being used in the play of a hole. So as you can see from our example there on the right, this gentleman has put a ball in play because he's put a ball in play from the teeing area. So how does a ball become in play? Well, it first needs to become in play when a player makes a stroke at it inside from that teeing area. In match play, our first example above there was in stroke play. In match play, when a player makes a stroke at it from the outside the teeing area, the opponent does not cancel the stroke under 6.1b. So what that rule is telling us, or that bullet points are telling us, is that an opponent has the opportunity, should I tee a ball outside the teeing area, the opponent has the opportunity to recall my shot. If I were to put that ball into a heavily wooded or rough area, the opponent doesn't have to recall my shot. So that's why we have this little deviation from what we have in stroke play, where in match play, it's up to the opponent when that ball becomes into play. So a ball is in play until it becomes hold, except it is no longer play, and we're going to go over a few examples of when it is no longer in play, from when it is lifted from the course. So in this example here over to the right, it's unaware to us of where they are on the golf course. However, we do know that that player has a ball in his hand, so he has lifted a ball. That ball is actually not in play. So a ball is also no longer in play when it is lost. Loss is another term that we'll actually go over a little bit more detail. But a ball can be lost when it is even at rest on the course, or in our bottom example here, you can see that it comes to rest out of bounds. So we no longer have a ball in play when it is lost or it is out of bounds. Or when another ball has been substituted for it, even if not allowed by this rule. So in this example, we're assuming this gentleman has substituted his lucky putting ball. That substituted ball, although done incorrectly, is actually now the ball in play. A ball that is not in play is a wrong ball. Wrong ball is again another term that we will go into more detail, but a way I think about it is any ball that is not your ball is a wrong ball. So if Jason, Kirby, Chris, and I are playing in a competition against each other, all their golf balls are wrong balls to me, and my golf ball to them. So a player cannot have more than one ball in play at a time. And if you know the rules of golf, there are always exceptions. And we have 3 exceptions listed here of when a player may have more than one golf ball in play. We'll go into detail about these a little bit more tomorrow, but for interest, the examples that have been shown below are the first one on the furthest left being you can have a second ball in play when you're playing a provisional ball. In our middle picture there, when you think you've played from when you think you've committed a serious breach, you can go back and correct your mistake and play that second ball. Or in our furthest example to the right, you're unsure of the rules and whether there is relief allowed in this situation, ground and repair. So in order to do so, you may play a second ball and have the committee rule on that decision. So when the rules refer to a ball in play, or excuse me, when the rules refer to a ball at rest or in motion, that ball is always in play. So you can't have a ball in motion or at rest if that ball is not in play. We can even have when a ball marker is in place to mark the spot of a ball in play. If the ball has not been lifted, the ball is still in play. If the ball has been lifted and replaced, it is in play even if the ball marker hasn't been removed. So in our example there in the bottom left, you can see on the putting green that the ball marker is there and that ball is in play. And that ball is in play because it is replacing the spot of where that ball marker was. A really good example is when you see players pick the ball up to line it to the hole. It has multiple statuses as it goes through that process. So when a player picks up the ball to align it, the ball is not in play. When he puts it back down and he thinks he has the correct alignment, the ball is back in play. And that process continues until he actually hits the ball and the ball becomes hold. So we'll talk about a substituted ball now. If you can look past the woman over here on our example dropping from shoulder height, but she is dropping a substituted ball. And a substituted ball is a player's ball is in play even if it is replaced, dropped, or placed in a wrong way or wrong place. Again, going back to this example, we see that the original ball is on the cart path. This player is dropping a substituted ball. As soon as that ball becomes dropped, that original ball no longer is in play. That substituted ball is now the ball in play. A substituted ball is the player's ball in play, even if the player was required under the rules to put an original back in play rather than to substitute a ball. So we go back to our gentleman here that put his lucky putting ball down. He's going to get a penalty for doing such a thing, but that substituted ball becomes the ball in play at that point. So Jason, we have reached our first question slide about in-play and substituted golf balls. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, just one so far. Is the ball in play when a player is rotating it on the green for putting alignment?
So in that example, we had a ball marker down and he is rotating it to have his correct alignment. So when that ball is lifted, the ball is not in play. Something that we'll talk about a little bit later, when we're dropping the ball for the purpose on the putting green to put the ball back into play, we have to actually put it into play as opposed to just dropping the ball and moving it around. So I think I'm roundabout answering, but to answer that question, when you're rotating to get alignment, the ball is not in play, but when you lift it is not in play, but when you put the ball back or replace the ball to intentionally put it into play, that's when the ball becomes in play.
Great, thanks. That's all we have so far, so I guess we can keep rolling, but I want to encourage everyone again, any questions you have, just send them our way.
All right, so let's jump into lost. Lost is another status of the ball if a ball is not found within 3 minutes. Under the new revision of the rules in 2019, we reduced that time to search for a golf ball from 5 to 3 minutes. But if the ball is not found within 3 minutes after the player or his or her caddy begins to search for it. If the search begins and is then temporarily interrupted for a good reason, and then we get some examples of our good reason, such as when a player stops searching when player suspended or needs to stand aside and wait for another player to play. We're going to temporarily interrupt that search, and therefore we're not going to continue to count that time as if we were searching. This is a good example of some of the people it takes to look for a golf ball in these heavily wooded areas. And if you can see it, you look in between the trees, you can see one of the committee members or rules officials actually looking at his watch to time the search. It would be wise of him to update the players and those searching for it how much time they actually have remaining, so that way they know how much longer they have. But if the search begins and is then temporarily interrupted when the player has mistakenly identified a wrong golf ball, or excuse me, a wrong ball. So it's very possible that the player is on the other side of the heavily wooded area. Somebody in the group has found a golf ball that they want to check to see if it is his identification mark. He's walking over. We're not going to count that time in him mistakenly identifying that wrong ball. And then we're just temporarily interrupted in that search. And the time between the interruption and when the search resumes does not count, like we were saying. I know one question that we get quite a bit. If I'm a player that has put a ball in a heavily wooded area on the right and a high fescued area on the left, and I have to search for both balls, it is not 3 combined minutes. It is 3 minutes for my ball that's on the right side of the fairway and 3 minutes for my ball that's on the left side of the fairway. That is one way of looking at it. The other way is if your ball is in the same, if your ball could be lost in the same general area within, not a matter of yardage, but within close distance of each other, you're only going to get that 3 minutes to search for that golf ball. The time allowed for search is 3 minutes in total, counting the search time before the interruption and after the search resumes. So like we said, we're going to talk about a wrong ball now. And a wrong ball is any ball other than the player's ball, or the player's ball in play, whether it be an original ball or in a substituted ball, a provisional ball, before it is abandoned under Rule 18.3c, or a second ball in stroke play played under 14.7b or 20.1c. And the reason why we see that in stroke play, because you cannot play a second ball if you're uncertain of your rules in a match, and if there is a serious breach within a match as well. So here are some examples of a wrong ball. Another player's in ball, a stray ball. So if you find a top flight out there, but you know you've been playing a Titleist, that's a stray ball, and it is a wrong ball to you. Or the player's own ball that is out of bounds, as our picture shows here. This player's ball came to rest out of bounds. That ball is now a wrong ball as it doesn't lie on part of the course, which was a caveat to having a ball in play. or the player's own ball that has become lost, or it is lifted and has not been put back into play. So we've reached our second question slide. Jason, do we have any additional questions?
None so far. Looking like you're getting through that pretty clearly there, Neil.
All right. So we'll talk about a ball marker. A ball marker is an artificial object. I think that's kind of important to read between the lines there and say artificial. We're not going to use a leaf. We're not going to use an acorn, but it's an artificial object used to mark the spot of the ball to be lifted, such as a tee, a coin, an object made to be a ball marker, or another small piece of equipment. So you can see over here on the right, we've got a coin, a ball marker, a divot replacing tool, and a tee. If you watched the first rendition of the TaylorMade relief, you saw Dustin Johnson using a tee to mark the position of his golf ball on the putting green. That's okay. It's uncommon to see in the PGA Tour, but it is okay to use a tee as a ball marker on the putting green. When the rules refer to a ball marker being moved, this means a ball marker in place of the course to mark the spot of the ball that has been lifted or not yet replaced. So we'll talk about what it takes to mark the position of the golf ball. So to do so, to show this, what you're trying to do is to show the spot where the ball is at rest, either by placing the ball marker right behind or right next to the ball. Again, this is done to show the spot of where the ball must be replaced after it has been lifted. There's been quite a few examples of when a player would mark next to the ball, and then when they go to replace the ball, they actually replace the ball in front of that mark as opposed to when it was next to it. So it is the player's duty to take that lifted ball and put it right back into the place where they had lifted it from. If they fail to do so, they could be playing from a wrong place. And another example of how to mark the ball, though I think it's rather uncommon, is holding a club on the ground right behind or next to the ball. So to replace a ball, we're going to place a ball by setting it down and letting it go with the intent for it to be done in play. So for example, I think we kind of alluded to it earlier, when we have a ball and we have it resting against our hip or it's on the edge of our pocket and it falls, that ball has not been replaced. We didn't have the intent to put that ball back into play. So that ball would not be considered in play. We could pick up that ball and put it back on the place that we are to replace that ball. Just kind of reiterating what we were just talking about. If the player sets a ball down without intending it to be in play, the ball has not been replaced and is not in play. Whenever a rule requires a ball to be replaced, the rule involved identifies a specific spot where that ball must be replaced. So we have an example here in Rule 9.4 where the ball is lifted or moved by a player. If the player lifts his or her ball at rest or causes it to move, the ball must be replaced on its original spot. So as you can see from this example over here to our right, the player is unaware somehow that the ball was going to be under his foot, and the ball has moved. So this ball has to be replaced. If we were unsure of the position of this golf ball, we're going to replace it to a spot that is to be estimated. So if you can't return it to its original spot, we're going to estimate that spot and make sure that ball gets replaced there. Jason, we've reached our third and final question slide here. Do we have anything that any questions about anything at all, or marking and replacing the golf ball?
Yep, got a couple flowing in here. If marking when marking beside the ball, does it matter if you place it on either side of the coin or marker?
So it doesn't when you mark to the side of the golf ball, you just want to be cognizant or aware of what side you marked of that artificial object that you used. For instance, if you used a coin and you marked it to the right of the golf ball, you want to make sure that you put the ball back to the left of that coin. So I think to answer that question, you can mark it on the right or the left of the, put your ball marker to the right or the left of the golf ball, but you just want to make sure you put it back into the same position that you lifted it from.
Next one here is, if the player rotates the ball for alignment without marking it, does the player receive a penalty?
The player has lifted, I think, and Kirby and Chris, feel free to chime in on this. So the player has rotated the golf ball without marking the golf ball. That ball is still in play because they have not lifted it. So unless I'm incorrect, I believe they've moved a ball in play. Chris, Kirby, can you chime in on that?
That's correct, Neil. If he moves his ball in play without marking it, it's subject to a one-stroke penalty.
Great, thanks for
it's just like
that.
Same thing, Neil, as if you're trying to identify your golf ball in the rough, and you rotate it to see your identification mark. If you haven't marked that golf ball, you're going to be penalized one stroke in that situation as well.
Yeah, another good example as Chris just laid out there.
Next question here, is there a penalty if I putt with my ball marker still behind the ball?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say yes. I would imagine that would be, I can't imagine a stroke taking place on the putting green that would benefit the player, but yes, there would be a penalty.
Yeah, one stroke.
I think that was a 2019 change.
It was.
Alrighty. If the ball is lifted and replaced, and then it moves, do you replace it on the original spot, or do you play it where it comes to rest?
That's a good question, and I believe that was covered in a different webinar. So a ball on the putting green has been lifted, or excuse me, marked, lifted. That player owns that spot. So that spot is where the next stroke is going to be played from. To take another level of that question, if a ball is on a putting green, it has not yet been marked or lifted and is moved by natural forces, such as wind or water, you're going to play where that ball comes to rest. There's a famous example from Billy Horschel at, I believe, the 15th at Augusta National. His ball was at rest on the putting green. He had yet to mark the ball, and then subsequently rolled into the penalty area. Billy had to play as if his ball came to rest in the penalty area, even though it was visibly seen as on the putting green at one point.
Gotcha. And looks like our last one here. Can you use your golf shoe as a ball marker?
I believe the definition of ball marker asks the player to use a small artificial object. So I would say no. I can't say I've ever come across that. So I believe, again, Chris and Kirby, feel free to chime in, but I believe that's a no.
I'd have to try to do some searching on that one, Neil. I know on the putting green, we want to use the small artificial object, although there is a small exception there where we can use the head of our putter. I would doubt on the putting green that we would want to be using our shoe, but I need to do a little searching on that one. I think we may have talked about that one in another seminar that I taught over the winter, but I just want to look that one up.
Yeah, just to kind of follow up that in the ball marker definition, we're looking for a small piece of equipment in the definition. So unless your shoe were to meet that definition of small piece, I would refrain against from using your shoe as a ball marker.
Great. Well, it looks like those questions are slowing up here. Just want to remind everyone again that today is part 1 of 2, so be sure to register for tomorrow's if you want to see the conclusion of today's presentation. I want to thank Neil and the whole tournament department for joining me today. Just another quick reminder that this is recorded and will be available on gapgolf.org/gap-webinars. Thanks all.